All right, so you know that feeling you get right when you open up your news app?
Yeah.
And it's just like, bam,
Yeah.
everything's hitting you at once.
Totally.
Trump's back in the headlines,
Yeah.
and the EU's dealing with another crisis, and everybody's talking about like this massive global power shift going on.
It's a lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
It's like you're trying to put together one of those 1,000-piece puzzles, but like half the pieces are missing.
Yeah, you don't even know what the picture's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where we come in. This deep dive is your cheat sheet to really understanding what's going on.
Exactly right. Today we're going deep into the world of economics and geopolitics. It can be pretty dense.
It can be.
But we've got a secret weapon.
Oh, do tell.
Our guide for today is an incredible conversation with Professor Emeritus of Financial Economics, Sylvester Eifinger.
Oh, wow. He's a big name.
He is. He has so much experience, and we're going to pull out the key insights on what Trump's doing these days, the EU's struggles, and the really big picture of how the world is changing.
Exactly. We've got this super wide-ranging conversation to work with, covers everything from Trump's trade tactics to the EU's internal market issues to NATO to even the dollar's strength. We're going to do the hard work and find those signals and all the noise for you.
That's the plan.
Let's jump right in then, starting with Trump.
Okay, so the discussion starts off with a pretty powerful statement right off the bat.
Does it ever?
Noah Link calls Trump an economic and political terrorist. Strong words. Professor Eifinger, he gets the intensity of that sentiment, but he wanted to look at Trump through an economist's lens, specifically using game theory.
Game theory. Okay. So he talks about Trump's first term as a Nash game, where basically everyone loses in the trade war because there was just this equal retaliation back and forth.
Tick for tat, yeah.
But this second term, he's saying it's different. This is a Stackelberg game now.
Okay, so what's the difference?
What's the big shift there?
The core idea with the Stackelberg game is this unequal power dynamic. Professor Eifinger's argument is that Trump's using the U.S.'s military strength and intelligence, especially through NATO, to basically back up his trade goals. It's not a level playing field anymore. Not everyone can hit back as hard.
So it's not just mutual pain now. It's more like a power play.
Exactly. It changes how countries negotiate, could even lead to a global system where the U.S. calls the shots more, at least for a while.
Now, here's where things get really interesting. He says this strategy, it can't go on forever. Something about the midterm elections being like a deadline.
That's right. He points to history, A lot of times the president's party loses seats in Congress during the midterms.
Right.
So he's saying Trump probably has like a year and a half, maybe, to really push his agenda through before Congress might push back a lot harder.
So it's a ticking clock.
Yeah.
And with that ticking clock, what's Trump's win condition? Like the professor said, you can't just bring back whole industries overnight.
Right. That's the long game.
Yeah.
But the discussion brought up the drop in oil prices. That's something concrete, something Trump can point to as a success in the short term.
A quick win. People get that.
Exactly. Simple, easy to understand.
Okay, what about all the advisors? We hear names like Mnuchin, Navarro, Bess. Are they all thinking short term, like Trump?
It's interesting. The professor thinks they might actually have a longer view. Maybe they see this aggressive Stackelberg game as just a phase, like they think the pressure will ease up eventually.
So they're playing the long game.
Could be.
All right, let's not forget, Trump's famous for using those executive orders, those presidential decrees, a lot.
Yeah.
Where does that fit?
Oh, that's a big part of his toolkit, right?
Huge.
As long as he's got the majority in the Senate and the House, he can just bypass all the debates and issue these decrees.
And he has, like hundreds, right?
Hundreds.
Oh.
But the professor brings up this recent Senate vote where some Republicans actually went against Canada on a trade issue.
Oh.
And Canada, that's a key U.S. ally. So maybe, just maybe, that's a sign that his support in Congress is cracking.
Interesting.
Could make those executive orders harder to use going forward.
Okay, let's shift gears over to Europe now. And the always kind of controversial topic of NATO and European defense. 5% defense spending target, that came up. What were the different perspectives on that?
Yeah, they both agreed that NATO countries need to spend more on defense, especially with everything going on globally.
Makes sense.
But there was some pushback on how the 5% target was presented, specifically by this former Fox News guy who's now get this, a defense minister.
No way.
Yeah, the professor felt like that approach was a little undiplomatic, within the NATO context.
It's not exactly subtle.
Not exact.
And they brought up Mark Rutte, too, the former Dutch prime minister, about this 5% target.
Oh, yeah, there was a bit of irony there, or maybe historical perspective. Rutte's pushing this 5% hard now, but the Netherlands itself didn't meet NATO spending targets for years while he was in charge.
A little hypocritical, maybe.
Yeah, you could say that.
But the war in Ukraine, that's been a game changer, hasn't it?
Definitely.
Even Macron's talking about France's nuclear weapons being like a European shield because, there are doubts about the U.S.'s long-term commitment to NATO.
Yeah, it's a wake-up call. Ukraine's shown how real the threat is, and the U.S. is looking less reliable, so Europe's realizing it needs to step up its own defense game.
Big time.
Macron's offer, it shows that.
Definitely. So how can Europe actually spend more on defense without breaking those EU budget rules? They had a golden rule idea.
Right. The golden rule is basically making a distinction between normal government spending and investments, specifically for defense.
So like defense spending would be treated like building a bridge or something.
Kinda, yeah. It'd be like long-term investments in the future, like InvestNL or the National Growth Funds in the Netherlands. If you categorize it differently, maybe it wouldn't count against those strict deficit limits the EU has.
So basically a separate piggy bank for defense that doesn't affect the national debt the same way.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
It could free up a lot of money for defense without triggering those deficit alarms.
Smart.
And the professor even brought up the COVID crisis measures as an example.
Oh, yeah, they did a lot then.
Exactly. Maybe similar emergency frameworks could be used for defense, too.
Interesting.
They also talked about streamlining regulations that hold back defense projects, things like environmental permits, the nitrogen issue in the Netherlands.
There's always something.
Right. And even using empty factories like the VDL one in Born.
Repurposing, make them useful.
Exactly.
What about bringing back the draft? The Opkomstplicht. That's a hot topic.
The professor brought it up. It could be a way to get more people in the military, have more reservists ready. But he also said a lot of young people in the Netherlands aren't exactly excited about being forced into service.
Understandably.
It's different in places like Finland or the Baltics, where they feel the threat more directly. One interesting idea was a mandatory survey, but participation would be voluntary.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah, it'd gauge interest, see who might actually be willing to serve if needed.
Okay, zooming out again to the big picture. The dollar. It's been the king for so long. What's its status now and what could threaten it?
Right, so the dollar's dominance comes from history, basically. After the Bretton Woods Agreement, it became the go-to currency. And the U.S. has these huge, super liquid financial markets.
Right.
Plus, they can finance their trade deficits in their own currency.
Yeah.
That's called seigniorage. It's like a profit a government makes just from issuing its currency.
Wait, really? Just from printing money?
Well, it's a bit more complex than that, but essentially, yeah. They estimate this seigniorage, plus being able to finance the trade deficit, gives the U.S. an extra 1.5% economic advantage.
1.5% doesn't sound like much.
But think about the scale of global trade. That's a huge amount of money, essentially free revenue just because everyone uses the dollar.
Wow. Okay, so what could actually knock the dollar off its throne?
The big threats are, first, if the U.S. economy itself becomes unstable. Second, if other currencies grow stronger.
Like the euro?
Like the euro, yeah. But it's had its own troubles and hasn't replaced the dollar. There's also this thing called the QWERTY effect. It basically means that once a system becomes dominant, it's really hard to change, even if there are better options out there.
Okay, like the keyboard layout.
Exactly. It's not the most efficient, but everyone uses it, so changing is a nightmare. Same with a dominant currency.
Makes sense.
Now, people like Lex Hugduin are worried that Trump's actions are actually hurting the dollar.
Is that a real concern?
It could be. See, his unpredictable policies and all the global uncertainty might push countries towards using their own currencies more in trade, especially with giants like China. That slow shift over time could chip away at the dollar's power.
Interesting. Let's focus on the EU now, always dealing with internal struggles. The discussion mentioned this idea that the EU often grows through crises. What's that about?
It's a pattern they've observed. The EU takes big leaps forward in terms of integration and policy whenever there's a crisis. Could be an economic downturn, could be a geopolitical shock.
So like pressure forces them to work together more.
Right. And the current situation with Ukraine and all the global shifts, it could be another one of those pressure moments.
Ukraine wanting to join the EU, maybe even the Eurozone, how does that fit into the EU's own challenges?
It adds another layer of complexity for sure. On the one hand, everyone wants to support Ukraine, but on the other hand, integrating such a large country in the middle of a war and then potentially adding them to the euro, it's a huge undertaking with potential economic risks.
It's a big decision. And we keep hearing about this tension between the push for a more unified Europe and the rise of those Eurosceptic parties. What's driving that?
It's this fundamental clash between wanting collective strength and holding on to national and regional identities.
Yeah,
These Eurosceptic movements, they're fueled by people who feel like their countries are losing their say, like their culture's being diluted by this centralized power in Brussels.
that makes sense.
And this is where the principle of subsidiarity comes in.
Okay, what is that?
It's rooted in Catholic social teaching. It says that decisions should be made at the most local level possible.
So like towns handle town issues.
Exactly. Unless the issue has wider impacts, then it goes up to the region, the nation, or even the EU.
So the professor is pretty critical of Brussels, said they're too centralized,
Uh,
even used that example of the curvature of bananas regulations.
oh, yeah, he wasn't a fan of that. His point is that Brussels is making decisions in areas where national or even local governments could handle things better.
Overreach.
Exactly. Like the nitrogen policy in the Netherlands, that's a national issue, shouldn't be dictated by Brussels.
Right.
And he even questioned the European Central Bank setting interest rates for the whole Eurozone.
Interesting.
He's asking, does that really fit with the idea of subsidiarity, especially when different parts of the Eurozone might need different approaches?
That's a good point.
Right.
They also talked about Jacques Delors and the choice he faced between a single currency and a unified European army.
Yes, Delors, he was the president of the European Commission. He realized Europe had to pick one. Either focus on the euro or on a shared military.
And they chose the euro.
They did, especially after Germany reunified. But the problem is they didn't really coordinate fiscal policies alongside the euro. That's why the Stability and Growth Pact has been such a headache.
Leading to all these tensions within the eurozone.
Exactly. And then there's Marius Holtrop's view. He said giving up your own currency is like giving up part of your country's independence.
So why did some countries stay out of the eurozone, though?
Holtrop's point highlights how important a national currency is, both symbolically and practically. Countries like Poland, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, they opted out for different reasons. Some weren't economically ready, some wanted to control their own monetary policy. Norway, with all its oil and gas wealth, they have influence even without being in the euro.
But with all the instability in the world right now, are some of those countries having second thoughts?
The professor thinks it's possible. This new focus on security, the war in Ukraine, it might push countries like Sweden and Denmark to rethink their stance, just like they did with NATO.
Things are changing fast.
They really are.
Finally, they talked about this feeling that we're in the middle of this massive global shift, heading towards a new world order. What were the big worries?
The biggest fear is that this new world order will be less democratic, more authoritarian.
That's scary.
Yeah, the balance of power might be shifting towards regimes that don't value democracy as much.
And even within the EU, there's worry about democratic backsliding.
Right. They mentioned examples like banning certain politicians from running in elections.
Wow.
The professor stressed that even when people support controversial figures, it's vital to let those opinions be voiced through democratic processes.
Otherwise, it just goes underground and festers.
Exactly. Suppressing it only makes things worse in the long run.
So for you, the learner, what are the key takeaways here? The world's economic and political systems, they're totally intertwined, constantly changing. Trump's moves, yeah, they seem unpredictable sometimes. But if you look through the lens of game theory, there's strategy there, a calculated use of power. The EU's got to adapt its defense and governance, and fast. The dollar's still strong, but it's facing new challenges in a world where power is less concentrated. And at the heart of it all is this tension between global integration and national sovereignty, the idea of subsidiarity.
One really interesting thought that came up is this. Are all these crises just happening naturally? Or are some of them being exploited, maybe even created, to push certain agendas in Europe?
It's a chilling thought.
It is. It makes
Yeah.
you realize we have to be critical, question the information we're given.
Absolutely. And for you to think about further, what happens if this new global order really does become more authoritarian? How would that affect your life, your community, the world? And to understand it all better, dive deeper into these concepts of game theory and subsidiarity. They're powerful tools for understanding how the world works.
They really are.
So much to learn, always more to explore. Until next time.
Until next time.